In this episode, I want to talk about shyness, confidence, and how performance can change your life. Get ready to get up on stage because you are now listening to Tiny Leaps, Big Changes. Welcome to another episode of Tiny Leaps, Big Changes, where I share simple strategies you can use to get more out of your life. My name is Greg Clunis, and back when I was young, back in middle school, back in high school, I was a pretty shy kid. Now, I don't really know why. I just always had trouble getting into the conversation and being open and being talkative with people. I was one of those kids that always felt like everyone was out to get them. And I did talk about this in a past episode, but there's something that I did that allowed me to push past that. And it's something that I do to this day. And that is that I started to perform. And here's what I mean by that. In high school, when I realized that this was going to be a problem, I decided to join musical theater. Now, musical theater obviously requires you to get up on stage, requires you to sing in front of an audience, requires you to do X, Y, Z. I even had to do a tap dance at some point. So it forced me out of that shell. It forced me into a place where I could be open with groups of people because it wasn't so scary anymore. And that has done so much for my life. It's done amazing things. I mean, I think now I'm an okay conversationalist. I think that when I meet somebody, I can usually have a pretty good conversation with them. I think that I'm a good listener. I think that I can also be a good talker. But I think all of that comes from this period in my life when I put myself into this situation, because I don't believe that I would be where I am now had I not done that. And so I was thinking about this the other day as I'm putting together a talk for the Tiny Leaps meetup group here in New York City on how to conquer your shyness. And I was thinking about this experience and I realized, performance plays a very big role in all of this. Performance plays a very big role in gaining confidence, in being able to have conversations, in being comfortable in your own skin and realizing that you are enough. It plays a very big role. And I don't necessarily mean getting on stage and being in musical theater. No, I actually think that we are all performing on a day-to-day basis in many different ways. And what I mean by that, for example, this podcast is a performance. I get in front of the microphone, I put everything on the table, I put it out into the world, and I let you critique it. Now, that could be a scary thing, and sometimes, honestly, it is. Sometimes I'm not sure if I should release an episode. But because I put myself into that performance, I'm able to grow as a person. I'm able to feel more confident in myself and in my ability to speak and in my ability to share things with people and not feel so self-conscious about it. And even if you don't have a podcast, I think so many of us perform for our friends and perform on social media and perform in any context, really, that involves other people. I think we're all putting on performances, and that's important because I think that is the thing that allows us to move past our fears and our uncomfortableness with ourselves. So what's my point here? Why is this important? Well, because I think that you should take more opportunities to perform in your life. I think that you should force yourself into more situations where you do need to perform. I think that if you can do that, then having conversations with people, genuinely listening to them and caring what they have to say becomes easy. It becomes second nature. And I think that by making yourself a performer, you also develop this ability to distance yourself from the result. You know, one of the things I had to do with musical theater was play a character. And while I was on stage, Greg Clunis wasn't the one singing and doing tap dances and dancing around. That was the character. And so because there was that distance, my personal ego, my personal emotions were protected. If somebody didn't like it, well, that's how it was written. That is what the character said. That is what the character needed to do. And so I was able to take myself out of that equation, protect my own ego, and deliver a character to the audience. And I think that when you put yourself into performances, when you make yourself get up in front of a crowd and speak or sing or dance or do comedy or whatever it is, I think that you learn how to create that character and how to distance yourself from an end result. And I think that's a very useful skill to have, especially for those of us trying to build businesses, or those of us trying to get good at networking, or those of us that want to do anything in our lives that requires us to connect with more people. I think that if we were more capable of removing ourselves from the end result, we wouldn't feel so bad about ourselves all the time. I think that we wouldn't hate ourselves as much as many of us do. And I think that we'd be able to start objectively seeing the value in being who we are. So my point with this episode is that in order to change your life, you need to do something different. One of the many things that you can do different is to focus more on connections with people. Now, if that's something that scares you, then I believe performances is the solution to that issue. If connecting with others, if speaking with others, if sharing your story, as I mentioned in yesterday's episode, is something that scares you, then your job is to learn how to create a character, learn how to separate yourself from that result, learn how to find your own value, regardless of how a conversation or a performance goes. And I think that putting yourself into a performance situation forces you to do that in a way that most other things can't. So with that said, I'd love to invite you to join our private Facebook group. You can find it by searching Tiny Leaps on Facebook, or just going to www.gregclunis.com and clicking the community tab. In the group, you're going to find a community of other listeners and friends and people that want to get more out of their life. They want to improve themselves and work on their shortcomings. And for many of them, shyness and lack of confidence is a big thing. So by joining the group, you're joining a community that will allow you to push yourself. And there's something powerful about that. So again, you can check it out on Facebook or go to my website, www.gregclunis.com, and click community. Until the next episode, I've been Greg Clunis, and remember, all big changes come from the tiny leaps you take every day, every day, every day.
Life is a Marathon, session 259. Welcome to the Life is a Marathon show. I'm Bruce Van Horn. This is where you'll embrace insight, wisdom, and inspiration to help you restore passion, purpose, and vision for your marathon of life. Well, folks, I have been waiting for this interview for a long time. I am so excited to be sharing today's guest with you today. And just before I pressed the record button, I told her that I feel like I've known her most of her life. I at least started hearing all about her when she was a very young teenager. But I have on Skype, it is my privilege to be talking with the amazing Rachel Cruz, who is Dave Ramsey's daughter, and she is just doing amazing things. I've heard Dave talk about Rachel and her sister and her brother for so long that it has just been so great to connect with her, and she is just out there changing lives in an amazing way. And while she's doing work that is tangentially related to what her dad does and the whole Ramsey megalopolis that has become that industry of Dave Ramsey in changing lives, she's taking it in her own direction, and it's been so fun to watch her find not only her own new name, but also to find her voice and her audience and to connect in just an amazingly special way that is independent of her dad. So it's fun as parents to see our children go off and do their thing and shine. And Rachel, you are doing that. So welcome to the show, Rachel.
Thank you, Bruce. That's such a nice introduction. I was like, oh my gosh. Yeah, thank you. Well, thanks for having me on. I was telling you earlier how we've connected via social media, and I've seen your picture, I feel like, all the time on social stuff. So it's actually fun when they said that I was doing this interview with you today. I was like, oh, good. Like, I actually get to talk to them. So thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
It is so much fun. And so, like I said, I've watched you come up. I've heard your dad tell stories, and I'm sure often embarrassing stories. I'm sure you're like, yes. Yeah, it's kind of like being raised a pastor's kid, right?
Exactly.
Could you just not share that from the pulpit,
Yes.
But yeah, so it's fun, and but what's more fun is to have watched you, like I said, mature and find your own voice and to reach out to people of your peer group, which is so important. Because that's where we all we all need a voice for the people that are within our own range. But I love what you're doing, because in my line of work, which is ultimately very much related to what you do, my goodness, if I had known when I was a teenager or in college, or let's just say if I had known any time before I turned 42 years old, the things that you're teaching now, who's to say how different my life would be? Now, I understand that God has a path for all of us, and now I have experienced the things in my life that have brought me to where I am, and I can now speak to audiences that are huge through those experiences. But I love that you're reaching out to younger people to try to save them from the pains that I went through in my early and adult life.
Well, good. Well, thanks. That's something I feel like I hear all the time, is that, like, if only I had known this when I was younger. And I think now, as I'm growing up, I'm like, that relates to money. It also relates to parenting and so many aspects of marriage, life, whatever it is. And so just being able to get healthy messages of wisdom to the younger generation as soon as possible, and even those who may have missed it, but no matter where they are in their walk, to be able to intersect that information and really change their lives.
Yeah, if you are breathing, it's not too late.
It's exactly right. Exactly.
If you can breathe, it is not too late to start doing something. So you have a new book coming out that I'm very excited about, and I adore the title. Oh my goodness, I love the title because it's a theme that is so recurrent, not just centered around money, but around every aspect of our lives. This whole comparison game is just a no-win proposition. I mean, whether it's people trying to start their own businesses or people trying to start a health or fitness program, we look over at somebody and we think, oh, well, they've got it so easy, or they've got the perfect marriage, or they've got the perfect job, or whatever. And, nobody's life is perfect but your own, to the extent that you decide to make it. And so your book it's coming out on October 3rd. It's called Love Your Life, Not Theirs. And this is, of course, not the first book that you have written, and you are no stranger to the New York Times bestseller list.
Oh gosh, which makes me so nervous.
Well,
this name book,
okay,
I'm like, oh,
that's
who knows what it'll do, but it's
it's all good. Yeah.
Don't compare it, right? I won't compare this book to the other book. We'll just
exactly
mix the comparisons all around.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about, we have to do at least like 2 minutes of what it was like growing up Ramsey.
I know. Yes.
Okay.
It's like
Can you do that?
Yes. Oh my gosh, absolutely. It's funny. I feel like people assume growing up as Dave Ramsey's kid that all we did was talk about money. And I joke, I'm like, it's not like we had mutual fund parties and like budget camps on the weekends. Like none of that happened. But mom and dad, they were very intentional in teaching us how money works. And for that, I'm forever grateful. But I really do. I give kudos to them so much. I mean, on the parenting
Absolutely.
side, they did people always were like, oh, did you feel different, or, whatever it may be because of Dave Ramsey, quote unquote. And so my answer is true. I'm like, no, like mom and dad stayed so grounded in their own personal marriage, walk, lifestyle, whatever it was. I mean, they really did. They stayed so grounded. And so as an effect to that, I think as kids, that's what we saw. That's what was modeled for us. And so they were incredible parents all around, and thankfully they were not overly obsessed with money, and our conversations did not always revolve around money.
And you were not born with a silver spoon in your mouth. They did not give you, well, and even, when you arrived on the scene, your dad was not as hugely successful as he is now. And so much of that success, you've grown up with your dad growing into who he has become now too. So
yeah, absolutely. I was actually born the year they filed for bankruptcy. And so my whole life, has been this front row seat of watching them literally start from nothing in a financial hole to working their way up. And along the way, just instilling these basic money principles in us kids, like, money comes from work. Money doesn't come from mom and dad's back pocket.
Exactly.
You're not a human ATM. You have to be a giver if you're going to win in life. You have to save. You have to spend wisely. I mean, all of these basic common sense things really were ingrained in us. And that's why I love the first book, Smart Money, Smart Kids, because being able to pull back from my memory and be able to give parents the tools and the practical application to teach their kids how money works was such a huge blessing and really an honor to do, because, gosh, talking about the generation before, I'm like, oh, parents have an amazing platform in their kids' lives to affect them on so many levels and so many issues, but money is missed so often. So being able to give them the right application, the real world experience, so that they can go off on their own and they can win, I mean, is truly changing your family tree. And so being able to take that message and kind of paying it forward from what I grew up with is so fun.
Yeah.
I love it.
You bought a pretty cool car when you were 16 too, didn't you?
I did. I know. I always tell people, I'm like, it was used. It wasn't as fancy as it sounds, but we did the 401 Dave plan. So we had
the 401 Dave.
Yeah. So whatever we matched, they would, whatever we saved, they would match. And so I saved $8,000. So I got a $16,000 car, paid for with cash at 16. And so I got I think it was a 2001 black BMW.
I love it.
It was super, so fun. And I had so much pride in that car, when I got in, I was So I told my friends, you can't drink Sonic Diet Cokes in the back seat. I don't want any drinks in my car. I'm keeping this clean, because I worked so hard for it. So it was a fun goal to have as a teenager, and be able to accomplish that was huge.
Yeah, and I love that. I have two boys myself. They're 19 and 13.
Okay.
And the things that they pay for themselves, they value so much. My youngest is really into fashion.
Yeah.
My oldest could just really care less what he wears or whatever, but my youngest is really into fashion and shoes, and we buy the tennis shoes, but they're not for playing in. They're
Yeah.
for you know what I'm talking about.
Yes, yes.
And he'll come home, and I'll find him in his room with a cloth rubbing some dirt off of them,
So
and
funny. Oh,
it is so much fun.
so
So,
great.
love your life, not theirs. What's this all about?
Yes, well, I'm so excited about this book because I think it does. It pushes head on into the subject that so many of us struggle with, and it is this idea of comparisons. And it was this theme that I kept seeing over and over and over for really many years, whether it was talking to people when I was speaking or my own friends or even my own life, looking at me like, gosh, this subject affects our money more than we realize. And it just keeps bubbling up to the surface. And I'm like, I just want to like squash it. And so being able to write a book to say, I want people to be in a position where you can say, this is my life, this is my money, this is my family, these are my values. And I want people to own that and say, I want people out there to love their life, not everyone else's. And so being able to give people permission and the steps to do that, I think lays a great foundation in order to build good money habits to live the life they want. And so that's really the foundational habit for me. The first one is quit the comparisons. And so getting that habit in place, building that foundation, because above that is when you can really, I believe, win with the money. Because ultimately, when you're content with your life and you're not, the comparison may seep in every now and then, but ultimately you can defeat that battle and win that battle. It's able to set you up to do things with your money. I believe, again, to do things that you value within your family.
Yeah, I mean, I can speak firsthand to the whole comparison piece where, we've got to keep up with our neighbors. We've got to up level to the next house because some of our best friends just moved out of our neighborhood and moved into the nicer neighborhoods. We've got to do that too. Or we've got to, my goodness, the money that we spend on, private schools, or, they've got to play on this special soccer team, not
Yes.
just the regular YMCA team that
Yeah.
costs $20.
That's right.
No, they've got to play on the private club, and
It's hard.
it's
And
just a no-win proposition too.
exactly right. Exactly right. And what's so hard is I look back and I'm like, 30 years ago, this idea of keeping up with the Joneses, you actually had to see the Joneses in person, or you had to see them at church and talk to them and hear about their life. But today,
I love where you're going with this.
yeah, in our back pockets
Yes.
via social media. And so it's this window into everyone's life. And it's something that I don't think my parents' generation necessarily struggled with. I think they are now, but it's not like they struggled with that when they were, 20, 30 years old. And so it's kind of this whole new world. And what's so hard, and the battle I keep wanting to fight people against and give people the willpower to tell them, like, what you're seeing on social media, it's not the whole picture. Like, it's everyone's highlight reel. So you put the picture of the great soccer team, and then
Right,
we're into the house with the granite countertops in the kitchen. Like, right? I mean, like, everything is
Yes,
so great.
our Instagram posts are curated.
Yeah, exactly.
We
Just pictures
handpick.
of them. Yeah, I mean, it's
Right.
it's pretty unbelievable. And so just to realize the reality of, like, these are not people. This is not the entire picture. Like, you're not seeing possibly the second mortgage they took out on that home to redo that kitchen to get those kitchen granite countertops, or you're not seeing the vacation credit cards, the bills that
Oh
are
my
coming back to
goodness.
them. I mean, you don't see those things, and the marriage fights that come out of that. So I think being
And
mature and growing up and saying, hey, listen, I can be happy from them for afar, that's fine. But if I try to model my life off of everyone else's highlight reel, it's probably going to end up being discontent and in debt, spending money I don't have
Yeah.
to keep up this lifestyle.
And I confess that I fall victim to that sometimes. Well,
Me
I don't.
too. We're just over
It's yeah. Well, I struggle. My audience will wait. Their ears will perk and say, "Bruce, victim? No, I'm responsible for every one of my decisions."
Right.
But I find myself because I'm a single dad of two boys, and so sometimes I'll be on Facebook or whatever, and I'll be looking at friends who have gone away for the weekend or done stuff, or they've gone to these amazing places. And some of it's like, oh, well, I really wish I could take my boys to Tahiti. But some of it is, well, we spent the weekend at home really not doing too much, while our friends, they went hiking in the mountains this weekend. I could have done that. And so there is that comparison. So some of it's good in that it will remind me, hey, I can get my boys out of the house and we could drive an hour to the mountains and go for a hike. That's a good thing. But then saying, oh, you know what? I need to pull out my credit card and take my boys to Tahiti because some of their friends' parents just did that too.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So I think having the maturity to decipher those two things is huge. I think that's a great point, because I don't think all social media is bad, and I don't want to blame.
No, not at all.
But I do think it's that vehicle which can take us down the road to comparison, and you just have to be careful.
And it sets us up to thinking that people don't struggle with the self-esteem issues or with the finance issues or what. I mean, how many times have we just been in utter shock when we saw a couple that on social media had the perfect marriage or the whatever, and we find out they've separated. You're like, what? No.
Yeah, it's like everything was perfect. I thought everything was great. Yes, I know, exactly. So yeah, being able to really combat that idea of comparison is huge when it comes to your money. Because
do you have some specific tips for us on how adults. I mean, I'm 52, but how can everybody? Yeah. What can we do to eliminate some of this comparison game?
Yeah, well, for me, there's one word that embodies so much in this that has helped me personally, and that is gratitude. Just
amen, sister.
Yes, and so I look, I'm like, a heart that's filled with gratitude. There is no room for discontentment and comparisons. I mean, when you are grateful for what you have, it's amazing the contentment that comes along right beside that. And so, honestly, for me, and it's hard because comparison and contentment, they're all kind of heart issues almost. It's not like, oh, to get out of debt, here's the numbers you need to face and whatnot. It's pretty much more of an emotional issue. And so for me, I'm like, to have anything tactical in place helps me. So honestly, on my iPhone, every morning I have the notes icon on my iPhone, and every morning, I'm not perfect at it, I try to be consistent, but I click it and I have a gratitude list, a running list, and I just type down 2 things I'm grateful for. And that's it. So that's the first thing I do, because I found myself starting my...
You must listen to my podcast.
Is that what you do that?
I teach this all the time. I teach people to start their day with a gratitude list and end it with a victory log.
Oh my gosh, Bruce, we're the same. I didn't even know. It's a great...
I know.
It's a great idea. Yeah, so the gratitude list, it's huge. And just probably like what you talk about on this so much, and I was victim to the idea, or not victim, I shouldn't say that, but I was in the habit of going on social media and checking emails and text messages, and before I'd even put on my glasses, I'd have my phone up to my face doing these things. So starting this, one of my friends started her gratitude list, and she put it on social media. So she would post once a week just something she was grateful for. And I was like, that's so good. What a great exercise. So yeah, your gratitude list, which you came up with, I'll say the following.
Well, it's not original to me. That predates even Napoleon Hill and his book Think and Grow Rich. Yeah, I think he learned it from Andrew Carnegie in the 1920s.
Yes. Oh, but it's amazing what gratitude will do in your life. So
absolutely.
So again, for me, that really is my tactical battle, because when I do see, oh my gosh, so-and-so in their career is doing this or hanging out with this person, I'm like, oh, that'd be fun to be there. Or, or as a mom, I'm like, oh my gosh, like the mom guilt and all of that is just crazy.
I've got to sidetrack you for just a second. Yeah. Do you follow Pauletta Waltz on Twitter or Instagram?
No.
She on Twitter, I think on Instagram, she's just Pauletta Waltz, but on Instagram, her handle is 5 things a day. And there's a hashtag 5 things a day, and she's encouraging people to post on Twitter 5 things for which you're grateful for right now.
Oh, I love it.
It is just so cool.
That's so great. So great. Yeah, I'm glad you gave her that shout out, because that's huge. I mean, just spreading that message of being able just to be grateful. So for me, again, that's big. Yeah. And even little things, I found myself to be that friend in my friends' lives that's excited for them when things happen. So when they get a raise, or they get to move into that great house they've been saving for, they get to upgrade the car, whatever it is, that it's not this awkward, like, I'm like, no, tell me, like, I want to know these things, because I want to be able to be excited for you. Because I found when I can be excited for people, again, that just brings joy and contentment in my life. And so I really do want to be that friend, because it is hard. Because I know from my own life, I'm like, like when something fun happens, you want to share it with someone. And if everyone's just like, oh my gosh, get you,
One of my favorite
Yeah.
phrases is what I want for myself, I want for everyone.
Yes.
And so when I see you, hit the number 1 best-selling, New York Times, that's what I want for myself. But I don't like, Rachel beat me to it. No,
Right,
I'm
right.
I'm thrilled for you,
Oh,
and I'm thrilled for everybody who does it. And it's just such a healthy way to, so if you are going to do the comparison, let's compare joys
exactly.
and share them.
Yep.
Love that.
100%.